Yeah. So just for our listeners at home, Dorian Gray is an example of a predator, not a dominant.
100%.
50 Shades of Grey
I was
is
like, Dorian Gray.
Oh,
yeah,
Isn't that a book?
Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey is
His
an
name-
example
it
of
wasn't
an
Dorian.
abusive relationship.
No, but isn't Dorian Gray a book?
That's a portrait.
Portrait of Dorian Gray.
Portrait of
Yeah.
Dorian Gray.
I'm so lost here because I don't
Christian
watch these
Grey.
movies.
Christian Grey.
Yeah.
Christian
I'm
Grey.
like, what are you talking about over
Yeah,
here?
no,
You got me so
Christian Grey.
confused.
Yeah,
I was
so
gonna say Dorian Gray. Yeah, well, he was a predator though. Dorian Gray he was an asshole too.
he was an asshole, but I was talking about Christian Grey. You're right.
Got you.
From 50 Shades of Grey is the portrait of an abusive relationship, not an actual dom-sub relationship, because she couldn't give her informed consent about anything that he was having her sign away to, since she had no information about any of it and hadn't experienced any of it. So she can't say for sure, I like these things or I don't like these things, having never experienced it. So him forcing her to sign a contract where she's not allowed to say no to anything is a form of abuse.
So how damaging would you say that movie was to the kink scene and the understanding of what kink is and how kink can be misused or presented in a way that causes people who don't know enough about it to potentially misuse it when they're trying to figure out how to get involved in it, but they don't have the right guidance?
Well,
Please answer that question.
There are some stories currently circulating throughout Hollywood where there were women that were victimized, put into some suggestive situations, photographed, and where these photos were then used as blackmail later on. And because they signed contracts, including NDAs, they were never allowed to tell authorities that these photographs even existed or that like they're being blackmailed. And these women were then coerced into some compromising positions where they had to do some not only just pretty illegal things, but like their entire reputations and lives have been entirely decimated.
Are we talking like Weinstein?
Things of that nature, but it's so much larger. It's so much. I mean, it's not just one guy.
NX, like Nixum or whatever, like the sex cult.
Nixium. What was that? Who was in that?
There was a lot of people involved.
Somebody
with that.
famous though, who is kind of like known as. Yeah, so that's interesting. So do you think that this is just kind of something that's part of Hollywood and part of an abuse structure of?
Well,
not just Hollywood.
Yeah,
I was going to say
it's a part of the world. Unfortunately,
right.
The thing is,
fashion. It's huge in fashion with male photographers.
It's huge with humanity. Though the unfortunate part about it is that we color so many different things, so many different aspects of humanity, and then put them in a corner, put them in this space where it's like, oh no, look at that. Everything that you're seeing there only happens with that.
It's those people
but
over there
human
are
nature.
different from them. We love to be able to try to categorize things in a way that that we can think that it is not encompassed in our own potentiality.
Well, so to not call you out, but you said earlier as the vanilla fella.
Right.
Not those words, but but as the vanilla fella in the room.
I'm playing a role in this podcast here. Right?
But
it's
as
called role playing.
As a vanilla fella in the room, there's an aspect of claiming that, like, so I'm vanilla, or when someone discusses things like polyamory, oh, I could never do that. Everybody does. Everybody has kinks. Everybody has like fetishes, proclivities, and it doesn't always go to the logical extreme where we're talking like leather bags over your face being beaten hanging from a ceiling. Like not everybody has that one, Is
that your extreme?
there's so many extremes. That's actually not the extreme.
Yeah,
that's actually relatively tame.
Throwback to our kink episode, learning about sounding.
I've already forgotten what that is. Intentionally, and we're not going to remind me.
Cool.
Block that one out.
Yeah, I just squirmed in my chair a little bit.
Right. So we looked at a map of what the most popular kink search terms were by state, and there were a couple of states where it was sounding, and I was like, "What the hell is
Hampshire
sounding?"
Specifically,
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
So bored. This is so bored. They just start shoving stuff up their pee holes. Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
You were not going to tell me what that was.
Oops. But yeah, no, I think that to answer your question, that movie and that book were really damaging to the BDSM community in general, because that was looked at as a perfect example of BDSM, but actually that's a perfect example of an abusive situation. And so many women fawned over that book like, oh my God, I would love to have myself a Christian Grey. No, you don't want to be abused. What this book is describing is abuse across the board. And anytime I like hear snippets of that, and I had so many friends who are professional dominatrixes who loathed that book and hated every part of it because it made every part of BDSM looks so bad that people looked at us as, oh, you guys are all just abusers. But absolutely not.
But so that's interesting, though, because you're describing people within the scene as recognizing the abuse, and maybe even other people's recognizing the abuse. But there was clearly a huge positive reaction from people who knew nothing about the scene to this book.
It opened them up to abuse.
What do you think was the positive attraction to this abusive behavior? Why are so many people aroused by that?
I think what it is it helped normalize certain types of kinks. Like everyone likes the idea of venturing into some unknown territory.
Okay.
So like getting tied up, that sounds really fun, or being blindfolded and not like having the thrill of not knowing what's coming next. There's something to be said about the fact that certain parts of the book were really fun in that scenario, but the overarching storyline of the way that Christian Grey treated
what's her face?
Yeah, exactly. Was just flat out abuse.
Dakota Johnson. I don't know her name in the book.
Yeah, so it's weird because there's the positive response from the general public was a lot of bored housewives that wanted to try something new and spice up their bedroom.
Romance novel.
Right, exactly. So it's like, oh, I would love to like maybe be spanked or tied up or not know what's coming next, or have someone just like take advantage of me like this. And there is something to be said of having that really fun dynamic, and that can absolutely come with a really healthy dom sub dynamic. But the way that this was actually portrayed was just flat out abuse.
But what does this tell us about the risks involved in how we portray the kink community, and how people could potentially enter into the kink community and be excited about all these things, but have no ability to see what is so obvious to you guys as abusive?
There are no red flags.
Right.
I mean, if they're not exposed to it and taught that this is wrong, and in fact reinforced that this is expected, then there are no red flags when there's an actual dangerous situation presented. But
so
not
what do
only
we
just
do
that,
as advocates of the kink community, though, to help educate people on that?
To go back to your other question, though, about like the positive things and why. First off, there's another series. The Marketplace series is a whole lot more ethical. Whole lot more ethical. Book series.
Okay.
If you are actually interested in the romance series that in like a fetish or kink based romance series, the Marketplace is 100% a whole lot more ethical than this. Furthermore, the number of women that I've personally hooked up with that not only were into being choked and having their hair pulled, but expected it without asking for it, worried me so much, because they thought that men that were kinky were just going to do it. And that's not the reality that any of us really want to live in.
Right.
Like, if men are going to behave like that, I actually had a conversation with my roommate just before I left the house today about this sort of thing, where like women that want the abuse will often go to men that they think will give it to them. It's the man's responsibility in that moment then to not be predatory about it, to not take it as an opportunity to then just take out their abuse on them, but to more give them the opportunity to explore that kink, to facilitate a safe environment for them where they feel like, even though you're choking them or pulling their hair, that you're not going to kill them.
Yep.
And for some people, maybe the fear that you might actually kill them actually does something for them too. Like, that's great. But you got to have that be a conversation in the beginning, because that could ruin your whole career. And if nothing else, you could ruin her mind. You could ruin her to sex if you take too much from what she thinks she's going to be giving you. And coming from like, you know, the positive and negative aspect of having no, I guess, red flags programmed, because this is all a matter of programming. If you're a noob in all of these situations, it's essentially the blind leading the blind. Would you really want a blind person whacking the hell out of another blind person and just like calling that sex? Like you need an adult in the room. You need someone who knows what the hell they're doing.
Always seek out someone who knows more about it than you do.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess my question is how do we
How do you know?
well how do we expose people to the kink community in a way where they can get access to the proper advice rather than getting exposed to it through something like 50 Shades of Grey, where then they go home to their husbands who know nothing about it, and all of a sudden they start exploring, some weird, unhealthy aspects of trying to recreate what they're seeing on the big screen.
Don't be afraid to talk about it.
Right.
The bigger problem that I find with so many different people is that they keep things in subtext. They don't want to talk about it so much.
Talk about it with who?
With anybody, their romantic partner, especially, specifically.
Okay. So even within the relationship.
Yeah, 100%. If there's an interest, don't like say, oh, like it would be great if you could do this, blah blah blah. Like have it be a conversation. Like, how do you feel about doing this? Can we do this? Is that okay? Like,
are you comfortable with this thing? Yeah.
Because the other thing too is if, for instance, if you want your man to smack you and he does not have an abusive like bone in his body, he doesn't want to hurt you, and in fact it would hurt him psychologically to do so, and you need that release, you need that excitement, you need that experience. Don't fuck with his mind.
Yeah.
don't make him. Yeah. Don't make him beat you. That's just that'll put him in such a weird space. Like there are so many different. There are people called brats.
Yeah.
There's like it's a whole thing where like they say no, and then they're like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Like you're supposed to like want it. You're supposed to like try to like make me
force me into it.
Yeah, you're supposed to force me into it, and it's like that's not how any of this works.
Yeah,
and now because you're a brat, you don't get what you want.
Yeah, exactly. So but you have to have knowledge of that dynamic before walking into it. If I'm gonna hook up with someone who's a brat, I want to know beforehand that they're a brat so that I can plan accordingly and know, okay, I'm going to say no, but no is not my safe word. I would rather establish a different safe word. If I say pineapple, please stop the scene. But if I say no, keep going.
Yeah. And one of the best or most common ones that I use is the traffic light. Mm-hmm. It's, green means go, obviously.
Yellow, maybe let's slow down, take a step.
Slow down a little bit, but red, full stop, and administer aftercare. Like they're not in a good place, like or it didn't go as they needed or wanted, and just like chill out, cool down, get her some fucking cocoa, and just hang out.
Talk to me about aftercare. What does that mean?
Well, aftercare is actually one of the more important parts of kink that not a lot of people even like pay as much attention about it. If
aftercare is so important. Yeah.
You get like some people get like the trembles and the shakes and stuff after especially their first experiences. So like it's almost like an out of body experience for some. And like when
tunnel vision happens.
Yeah. And if they don't feel like, so in these instances, like if you're tying somebody up for their first time, or if you're just tying somebody up in general, the endorphins, the adrenaline, all of that, they get oxytocin, they feel comfortable and loving towards their dom. You want to be able to coddle them as well. Like the first time that I was beaten, I was held while I was beaten. Mm-hmm. Like not that, but sexually. Yeah. Sorry, I totally. The first time I was beaten sexually, I was held.
What does that mean exactly?
Somebody like I was in their arms. I was actually in a hood too, so I couldn't see or hear anything. Perfect. It's so brilliant. I'll get into that in a second too. But like I was in someone's arms, they were holding on to me, they were hugging me and like holding me, and they were keeping my arms so that I couldn't fucking move, but they were like embracing me still.
So you're getting a hug. Yeah.
And they were like petting my head and everything while like somebody was electrocuting my balls. And and that's one of those things where like you wouldn't think about it, but all up here is actually in an okay place. Mm-hmm. Like once you can establish what to do with your face, your arms, your body, like when you're out of there, you're out of your body. You don't have to worry about, I don't even know. For instance, things like hoods or chastity. If you can't stay hard, or if you don't know what to do with your face or what to look at, put a hood on your face. It takes all the attention off of you. Mm-hmm. You don't have to present anymore. You're no longer performing. You are now the subject. You are just an object. You're a toy, and
in a consensual way.
In a consensual way. But in that way, though, you can be left in a more comfortable space. Mm-hmm. With something like a hood, you focus on your breathing. You're not seeing anything. You don't hear as much. I mean, you can still hear. There's sensory deprivation hoods as well, but no one's looking at your face, And that's the best part, is you can just completely go somewhere else.
Thanks for checking out this clip from our show.
To watch more clips or full episodes, click on our profile below.
If you want to stay up to date on all of our new episodes and videos, click subscribe.
And if you have any ideas for future guests or topics that you would like to see us cover on the show,
leave us a message in the comments or connect with us on any of our social media channels at Funtime Program.
Or on our website at funtimeprogram.com.
We'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.